Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to this is really early for us, episode of The Standard is the Standard. I'm Jeff Hartman, editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, and with me, as always, co-host Lance Williams. Lance, this afternoon, how are you doing?
Hopefully, given the early start time, it will be an example, or hopefully it'll be better sound quality because we're earlier in the day. The sound will be crisper and fresher.
Yes. Well, it can't get much worse than last episode, and we apologize for that. Um, Hopefully it sounds good. I'll be checking into the live chat here in a few seconds to make sure everything's good on everyone else's end. If you're watching live on YouTube, we appreciate you always to chime in if you'd like, and maybe we'll answer some questions at the end of the show if we have time for that. But there is a lot of news to get into. We'll dig into those as we go. Starting off with the first free agent signing for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that's one of their own. They agreed to a 2-year extension to defensive end or defensive tackle, whatever verbiage you use to describe the 3-4 defensive line. Tyson Alualu will be back, the Cal State alum, as Lance will probably say. Lance, other than the fact that he went to the same school you did you like the signing or not?
I thought the signing was a solid one, and that's the type of free agent signing that's indicative of Kevin Colbert and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is they tend to spend money on their own free agents because they have a greater lens into how those players fit, how they play, and how they perform. So they're more easily able to make an adequate assessment and a grading of those free agents. So I'm not surprised as well. And Jeff, to correct you, it's the University of California at Berkeley. Roll on you Bears, Pac-12 football at its finest. So I'm glad that a fellow alum is a Pittsburgh Steeler. Roll on you Bears, quality signing, great depth for the position, solid ball player, and more so than anything else, he stayed healthy, and that's a big thing. He was always available.
Did you just pull an Ohio State? The California? Did you really just say that?
Yes, it's
Oh
the
my gosh.
University of California
Geez.
at Berkeley, Cal
That's
Berkeley.
that's one of the main reasons I hate Ohio State is because I know a lot of people that went to Ohio State. I grew up close to Ohio, and then you say, "Oh, you went to Ohio State." I'm sorry, the Ohio State. Oh my, shut up! It's just Ohio State, okay? It's
Those Golden Bears, roll on you Bears.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Hey,
You know the story.
bowl eligible,
Bowl
yeah.
eligible, baby. By the way, that was the worst bowl game in bowl history. I mean, that was so bad. They shouldn't be invited back for another 10 years. I mean, they got to go
Well,
on bowl parole. That's
yeah.
how bad it was.
Yeah, so well, back to the Steelers stuff. Didn't mean to go on a quick tangent there, but I thought it was a great signing, and this was something that was funny because on Thursday night, which was published on Friday on the Steelers preview show with Dave and Brian, we talked about the defensive line, and we said that we all agreed that Tyson Alualu should be brought back. He's versatile, can play multiple positions, could even fill in for Hargrave at nose tackle if needed. What do you think this means, though, for other players? The other players that would be on the bubble in terms of free agency are LT Walton, Daniel McCullers. Does this signing of Alualu mean anything to them?
I think both of those players. I don't think they'll be back. I don't think McCullers definitely will be back. I think they'll look to upgrade those spots. I mean, they've got to get better on the defensive side. And I think you do that up front in the trenches, particularly with defensive line depth. I think you can do better than those two players. And I think they will, and they will definitely look to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, that's a typical Colbert signing. I'm curious to see if the one guy that's been getting a lot of buzz so far in terms of free agency and other teams that are looking at him is Jesse James. Reportedly, the Buffalo Bills, Jacksonville Jaguars are both interested in his services for 2019. Be really curious to see how the Steelers handle that. Will they try to lock him up before he hits free agency, or are they going to let him test the waters? We'll see. If you had a choice, though, Lance, what would you do with Jesse James?
I would let Jesse walk, and I would try to develop Xavier Grimble. And I think some of it will depend on what the Steelers think about Xavier Grimble. I think athletically, Xavier Grimble was the better player. Made a questionable decision in that Denver game, but from a pure physical talent perspective, I think Grimble is better. But when you look at Jesse James, what does he do? He catches the football. He doesn't turn the football over. He doesn't get a lot of yards after the catch, but he's a dependable third down receiver. And he's just a dependable football player. He's a guy that is available week in, week out that you can line up that is going to make plays when his number is called. Nothing fantastic, nothing splash, but just solid brick and mortar type plays. And you need that on an offense, particularly that one that's inconsistent with the rookie quarterback. So it makes sense that he could play for Buffalo to give that young quarterback a stabilizing element in the passing game.
Yeah, and if they kept him, I wouldn't be upset. But I don't think they should go out of their way to bring him back because all the attributes you just mentioned, in my opinion, you can find elsewhere. You
Yes.
know, he catches the football. He's an average blocker at best. Um, doesn't turn the ball over. Those are characteristics of very average tight ends in the National Football League.
Right. No
So
pop and sizzle. No pop and sizzle there.
no.
None at all.
And in what you said, Grimble has more of an upside in terms of athleticism compared to Jesse James. So take that for what it's worth. But a lot of people are disagreeing with us. They think that we should re-sign Jesse James. This is from the live chat. So just to give you a definite bead on what people are thinking. But let's switch gears now a little bit and let's go to what Kevin Colbert. This is the news that dominated the wire up until Robert Kraft's issues on Friday. Not going to talk about that. No, we're not going to get into that. But anyways, yeah. Anyway,
Hashtag Patriots.
okay, all right. With PG, we're keeping it PG. Okay, so Kevin Colbert's comments. He's had a scouting combine press conference where he was asked several questions about some very key players. He talked about Antonio Brown at length. He talked about Ben Roethlisberger and leadership, and he talked about Le'Veon Bell. Those were probably the three biggest talking points that he had during his press conference. We're going to talk about all of these comments that he made. We're going to dissect them one by one, and we're going to start off with Le'Veon Bell. A lot of people on this show, we talked about it. Will they use the transition tag on Le'Veon Bell? We talked about how it could possibly lead to more of it could be a situation where the Steelers could get more for Bell in a trade situation, a lot of stuff. It would have been ugly. Kevin Colbert says, not going to happen. They're not going to put any tag on Le'Veon Bell, no franchise tag, no transition tag. They're essentially washing their hands, saying, good riddance, good luck. We'll see you in the future on another team. Lance, what were your thoughts when you heard that? And what do you think this means for Le'Veon Bell?
I wasn't surprised. I mean, from my perspective, I thought they should have used the mechanism of the tag to try to get as much value out of Le'Veon Bell. But I understand for two reasons why they didn't do it. One, you don't want the drama, and two, you want the cap space available. And I think that might be indicative of the Steelers maybe being a little bit more aggressive than we're used to them being in the beginning of the free agent period. So they want that money available to be able to do that. As far as Le'Veon Bell, I'm going to predict that Le'Veon Bell is going to sign a lucrative contract from somebody at the start of the business year. Le'Veon Bell will be one of the first free agents signed. Regardless of what we think about Le'Veon Bell, we think about the way he handled the situation. We're all in agreement that Le'Veon Bell is a hell of a football player. And the NFL knows it. Everyone knows that, and that can't be questioned. And I suspect that he will be compensated likewise.
Yeah, now my question for you, and I'm going to ask you the same exact question later about Antonio Brown. Bell's going to be playing somewhere else next year. As a fan, okay, do you wish Le'Veon Bell well and say, man, it's been a great run. You've been good to us. Good luck. Thanks for all your hard work and effort. Or do you say, I hope you go somewhere and trip and fall flat on your face and look like the horse's ass that you are? I mean, so seriously, like as a fan,
Right,
what's
right.
your gut instinct on that?
No, I'm going to answer it in terms of a fan, in terms of age ranges. So when I was 15, so let me give you 15 to 25, I'd have been like, man, yeah, I hope he slips on the banana peel and falls down the steps. Right? I hope he gets hurt. 25 to 35, I probably would have been like, man, I still hope he gets hurt, but maybe he's out just a few games. 35 to my present age, I'm like, man, it's a business. It's a slimy, dirty business. And, you know, everybody's hands are a little bit dirty on both ends, man. It's just a business. You got to take care of your body. Your body is your asset. and you've got to try to get the most value out of it. It's just business, man. That's is what it is. So I wish the guy well. He played hard for the Steelers. They weren't able to get it done. So there it is, man. Maybe they could have signed him. He could have stayed here. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. He could have handled it better. I thought he just should have been silent and not said anything and just let it work its way out behind closed doors. He didn't. It's over. You got to move on. The Steelers need to focus on getting better. That's my answer now at this age. But as a younger guy, I'd have been like, man, banana peel, dog. Slip on that.
Now, I'm not. I don't want him to get hurt. Okay, I never would wish injury on anyone, but I hope he sucks at another team. Plain and simple, for a lot of reasons. Now, I'm the perfect example of what's wrong with NFL fans. I always back the team. I never back the player. It's just the way that it is. I don't know why. This is why in the NFL, owners never really get the criticism that the players do, even though the owners are the ones that are sometimes pulling these strings that are, well, shouldn't be pulled. We'll put it that way.
Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why, Jeff. Let me interrupt you real quick. Let me
Go
tell
ahead.
you why. Because owners are insulated for the most part, except if you're Jerry Jones. Owners are pretty insulated, and you don't see what they do. You don't really see their impact besides the fact that they sign contracts. You really don't know what they're doing and how they impact the football team on a day-to-day basis. So I'll give you an example. When the Cleveland Browns signed that little guy, I'm forgetting his name. Who's the guy that did the hand symbols, the little guy, the quarterback?
Jeez. Johnny Manziel. Johnny
Manziel, right? Johnny Manziel. That was an ownership draft pick, right? And it's a miserable pick for the Browns. But the football guys get blamed for it, not the owner. And because the owners are insulated, fans gravitate to always back owners for that reason, I think.
Yeah, it could be that. It could be that the ownership represents the team that I love. Like, I don't love any individual player. I mean, I favor players, but it's the team. Players are going to come and go. I'm always going to be a Steeler fan no matter what. And so there's a part of me that wants to see Le'Veon Bell go somewhere like the New York Jets, and he'll take his 2017 4 yards per carry up there, and he'll go down. It'll be less because everyone says, oh, it's Le'Veon Bell that made the offensive line so good. I'm pretty sure the offensive line showed that in 2018 with James Conner as a runner, that's not the case. Because James Conner almost had 1,000 yards rushing. He only played in 13 games. And let's not forget that Jalen Samuels hung up 142 yards on the Patriots on the ground, something he's never done at any stage of his career, which is rush for over 100 yards. To me, I want this to play out in the Steelers' favor still. It's not going to come in a draft pick or a trade. I want this to show that the Steelers' offensive line is that good. I want him to go somewhere, and he's going to take a max contract, and he'll make some plays, but I want him to struggle. I want him to do his little pitter-patter in the backfield and get stopped for a -3. I don't want him to succeed because it's going to make the Steelers look better. It's going to make the decision to let him go look better. It's going to make him look worse. That's just I'm being a fan here, and that's the way I feel. And so I don't wish injury on him. I understand his motives. I know he's going to sign a max contract. I think he needs to stop eating Krispy Kreme donuts. And I think that it'll be interesting to see where he goes. Now, if he goes on a dynamic team, let's say the Houston Texans roll out the red carpet, might be a different story. He's going to have a better team around him. But if he goes for the max contract, doesn't really care about the team, and he ends up on a team that doesn't have a very good offensive line, I don't think you're going to see the same dynamic Le'Veon Bell as you did in Pittsburgh. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, I would agree with that. I mean, it's a symbiotic relationship between a running back and offensive line. And to your point, you were talking about compensation, how the Steelers look better. The Steelers' compensation will probably be, I'm guessing, anywhere third round to the fourth rounder in the 2020 draft, a compensatory. And the Steelers have not received a compensatory selection for 2019. I know that list came out.
Yeah, they did not get one. So I believe they have 8 total draft picks throughout the 7 rounds, and they don't have a pick in the 5th round. I think they're going to probably try to get I think there's going to be some draft trades coming up. I think obviously with Antonio Brown, there might be some draft picks involved. So let's talk about Antonio Brown since we just brought him up. Kevin Colbert talked at length about Antonio Brown, about the meeting that took place down in Florida between he and Art Rooney II, who was present, what was said. The Steelers, and this hasn't really gotten as much attention as I thought it would. They did not give Drew Rosenhaus permission to talk to any other teams. And I guess from what I've gathered on the minimal news that I've read about this is that this is kind of commonplace in the National Football League, that if a player is going to be traded, sometimes they allow the agent to kind of, hey, you want to talk to teams, that's fine. You present us the trade that you might have, and we'll see if we okay it. But in this case, the Steelers said, no, you're not talking to anybody. We're the ones that are going to manufacture this deal from start to finish. And Kevin Colbert, probably the most poignant comment that he made about Antonio Brown was, this has to be the right deal for the Steelers. If it's not the right deal, we are not going to just trade him, which means that if they don't get a first round pick, which a lot of sources from like ESPN are saying that that's what the Steelers want. They want a first round draft pick for Antonio Brown. And if not, they want a second and possible players. If they don't get it, then they're not going to trade him. In which case, Antonio Brown might say, well, then I'm not going to play. And if he doesn't play, the Steelers can basically take him to task, so to speak, in terms of finances. They don't have to pay him if he's not showing up. He's not going to collect game checks. They would be able to roll over that money similar to what they did with Bell in 2018. So, Lance, what were your thoughts on Colbert really kind of doubling down and saying, we're not just going to trade this guy for chump change. We need to get what we think his value is.
I mean, I'm not surprised at all. And it's something that we echoed on previous shows. Given his stature as a potential Hall of Fame receiver, given the fact that he led the National Football League in receiving touchdowns at 15, given the fact that he has 3 years remaining on his contract, and the Steelers may have to eat a $21 million meal if they trade him, he's not getting traded for peanuts. And I wrote this on Twitter. The one thing that Antonio Brown and his representation, they have to come to grips with, the Steelers aren't in full control of this. They own his rights. He is asking to be traded. And when you ask, to my point that I made in last week's, yeah, I said it, silence is golden. When you're asking to do anything, it's best to be quiet and to try to negotiate that in good faith behind closed doors, because he is asking for permission to leave. And if it doesn't happen, scorching the earth and acting a fool, doing the act a fool strategy on Twitter is not going to help you return and come back and be in the good graces of that locker room. So there's a lot that could happen and a lot that could go wrong for Antonio Brown. Now, if you were to ask me to look into a crystal ball, I think whatever happens with Antonio Brown gets done prior to the 5th day of the new season, March 18th, which is when they have to do the trade before they pay him the roster bonus. I think it'll get done then, because the one thing I do know, and riddle me this, Jeff, would you want to pay anybody anything if they did not want to report to work? If a guy told you, I don't want to come to work, I don't want to be here, you would do your darndest to get them off of your team immediately. Be it fire, waive, whatever. Now, we know we won't fire, or he won't get fired or waived, but you wouldn't want to pay him another nickel. So the Steelers are going to do everything they can to trade him to the most desirable location that makes the most sense for the Steelers, meaning he won't be in the AFC North for sure, and he will not be a New England Patriot. Those things I can guarantee.
Well, those have already been the no trade zones that have already been announced, not by the Steelers, but like Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, through his sources, said that no AFC North teams and the Patriots, they prefer an NFC team. Excuse me. That way they would only have to see Antonio Brown once every 4 years, or in the Super Bowl if they were to happen to meet in that area. But no, I wouldn't want to pay him $2.1 million for doing absolutely nothing. That makes zero sense, but the deal has to make sense. And so right, if they have to eat the $2.1 million, this sounds horrible, but if you got to make the deal right for your franchise and for your organization. It makes sense to do it prior to the draft. You want to get that done. If they don't get it done before that 2.1 million goes proactive, then I could see this almost being a draft day trade where he's bunched in with a couple teams and maybe there's a three-way team trade. Um, who knows? It's honestly, I wrote an article that ran today, Sunday. Every Sunday, I do a letter from the editor, and actually look back at the early portions of Antonio Brown's career and asked myself, how did we get to this point? I mean, seriously, how did we get here? Antonio Brown went from a humble 6th-round draft pick who was just making plays on special teams to this, to a guy that is so egocentric. It really does kind of follow the pattern of Terrell Owens and T.O., Antonio Brown and AB. Is this just money and fame, Lance, or do you think there's something else?
I mean, I think it's money and fame. I mean, he's in a. I mean, look, I posted his picture. You know, I call him the Blue Dread, and when the world opens up to you in particular ways that you never thought would happen in your life, and coming from where he comes from, being homeless at one point in time, coming from the rough streets of Liberty City, I mean, you just can get full of yourself. I mean, you can get full of yourself and you can get lost in an identity, into this caricature of yourself. And I don't know Antonio Brown, so I don't want to speak too much to that, but it just looks like, there's some Hollywood there. He's believing what he is. He's AB, like he's this third person guy. And it feels as if he's living it out. Like we see him living it out right in front of our eyes. Like he's playing the part of some character that he created, and it feels as if he feels the pressure of trying to live up to that and be that, instead of just being a humble ball player that goes out and gets numbers.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the Steelers play their cards here, and you have to wonder, do they really try to stick it to Antonio Brown? That's definitely potential. If you have two teams that are offering first-round draft picks that are very close to each other in terms of positioning, and you're looking at one where you could see him excelling, I'm thinking like, okay, so the Green Bay Packers offer you a one. You have Aaron Rodgers up there. Clearly, that could be a very good symbiotic relationship. And then Buffalo offers you something then very similar in terms of draft position. Do they say, you know what, let's screw him over and let's send him to Buffalo?
You know what they're going to do, Jeff? And let me correct both of us. The roster bonus is 2.5 million.
Oh, well.
Let me just correct ourselves. No problem. You know what they're going to say? We're going to do what's in the best interest of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm not looking at the draft order. I don't have it pulled up in front of me. I'm going to guess the Buffalo Bills draft selection is a little bit higher than the Green Bay Packers. Correct me if I'm wrong on the live chat.
I'll have to look it up.
Whether it be one selection higher, two, or three, it's higher. Thus, you do the Bills pick. That's what they're going to do. They're going to just say, look, we're going to take the position in the pick, and we're going to take the package that's best for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're going to come from a business perspective. And I'm sure there are people probably in the organization that want to shaft them. But it's going to be about business. They're going to take the best package, period. And it's going to be the best package for them and not for Antonio Brown. So if that means he goes and plays with that second-year quarterback up in Buffalo, that's where he'll go.
Buffalo Bills pick 9th. Green Bay Packers picked 12th. So that actually was a pretty good example. I didn't even know that. I just kind of pulled that out of my hat, that those two teams, but they draft close to each other. So in that scenario, yeah, I can see what you're saying. Now, let me ask you the same question I asked you for Le'Veon Bell, but this time Antonio Brown. So he clearly wants out, and he'll get out eventually. It's in some way, shape, or form. But like you said, the Steelers have full control over where he goes. Do you wish Antonio Brown the best and say, you know what, AB, it's been phenomenal. We've seen you go from a 6th-round draft pick to the best receiver in the game. You've put up some ridiculous numbers. You've made a lot of highlight reel plays here in Pittsburgh. It's been a lot of fun watching you play. Good luck wherever you go. Or do you say, you know what, you went out of here so bad, screw you. Good luck finding that same mojo somewhere else. Get the hell out of here. What's your response to Antonio Brown? I kind of gave away my feelings there a little bit.
Yeah. They came out, man. I saw it. Just say kick rocks. Look, hey, man, good luck to him in the future, man. He played, he gave the Steelers everything. From playing himself from a 6th-round draft pick to a Hall of Fame player and the production that he put up in the last 5 years, he gave the Steelers everything. And regardless of his antics this year and some of his antics in the last few years and him being a royal pain in the rump, the one thing that nobody can ever say about Antonio Brown, and the consistent thing they've all said is he's the hardest worker possibly that they've ever seen. So from that perspective, as a fan, that's what you want. You want a guy to work hard on their craft and to bring everything that entails to the football field and give you 1,000% every Sunday. And that's what Antonio Brown did. Unfortunately, some of his antics negated some of the hard work that he put in, and the fact that it may have had a negative impact on the end result of what his team was trying to accomplish, and that was to win a championship. But Antonio Brown gave Steeler fans everything, blood, sweat, and tears, in terms of his impact and his ability to play on that football field. So I wish him the best.
He gave him blood, sweat, and tears until he walked out on him.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, he did. Absolutely.
Yeah. Hardest worker around until he quits on his team.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's the irony in it, right? Is that he doesn't see that. No. Right. That's the blind spot. Right. It's because he works that hard to his craft, it becomes selfish. Like it had a selfish negative impact as well, and he didn't see that. And hopefully, someone in his life can let him see that. And I still think this part could be rectified if he stepped back and just apologized for walking out on his team. But I think his lack of humility at this point won't allow him to do that.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I actually put this article up yesterday, and it was, how do you view Antonio Brown leaving? Do you wish him well? I gave 2 options. Do you wish him well, or do you hope he flounders and somewhere else? Now, granted, you know what the majority of the fan base is going to suggest. I believe we had just shy of 2,000 votes, and 79 or 80% said that they hope he flounders somewhere else. Let me say, because obviously I gave you a little bit of my feelings on this earlier when I broached the subject. I don't always have angst when players leave Pittsburgh. I don't. It seems like it now because of Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown, but there have been players that have left that you're like, I get it. I'll give you the perfect example. Jericho Cotchery, when he played for Pittsburgh, his final year, he scored 10 touchdowns. And everyone was like, man, this guy would be great to keep around. And we all knew, if you were smart and actually thought about it, that there's no way they'd be able to keep him because his production's going to price himself out of Pittsburgh with the salary cap. And so when he left, hey, he did a great job. And I have no ill will over that, him leaving. You could go back even with players like Chad Brown in the 90s. I had no ill will when he left either. It's just the way these guys are going about their business that I don't like.
Right, exactly.
I'm not questioning their skill level at all. They're all pro players. That means so much more than Pro Bowl stuff. They're all pro players. Some might say they're generational talents. I would say that is the case for both of the players that we're talking about. And I firmly believe that if they would have just handled their business differently, even if the end result is the same, they're leaving, they're no longer on the team, the fan perception of them would be completely different. Le'Veon Bell's got a ton of baggage, though. I mean, you think back to the suspensions and all that stuff that went down early in his career, and then you have the way that he sat out. It's just bad. So I want to make that clear. If it's your first time listening to the show, I don't want you to think, man, this guy hates on every single player that leaves Pittsburgh. No, that's not the case.
He does.
Yeah. So
he does.
I do.
He does. Actually, I mean, here's the thing with AB, and I think why most fans are going to be sour about AB is, I mean, he signed a 5 year contract, and he's trying to force himself out in year three of the contract. And I think the disingenuous thing when it comes to Antonio Brown is this is about Ben. Yes, I'll give that 30%. I don't think I think their working relationship is fractured at this point, to use a kind word. But this is 70% about money. The problem with Antonio Brown is when you're the best player in the game and you set the market shifts based on your deal. That's just what happens. And I'm sure that Drew Rosenhaus and the rest of Antonio Brown's team, they recognize that Mike Evans is making $20 million a year to play in Tampa and be nowhere near as good as Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown sees that. He recognizes he's 31 years of age. He wants one more bite at the apple. He knows he's getting about 36 million over the next 3 seasons. He wants another contract to get a big signing bonus and more guaranteed money because he knows the next 3 years, I mean, this is it for him. He'll be 31 this year, I believe, in July. He wants another bite at the apple. So Ben Roethlisberger and his relationship with Ben Roethlisberger is being used as the impetus to force himself out, in my opinion, to get a new deal. Now, the way the NFL is set up, players don't really have an option. I mean, you can try to be signed like I suggested and try to negotiate behind closed doors, but when you're signed and you're in your third deal, you're trying to get out, they're not going to redo his deal. They made him the highest paid wide receiver at the time. He's not getting a new deal. So he's going to the act of fool strategy and trying to get out. And when you do that, you're going to look terrible to the fan base that you're leaving. Point blank. But he's willing to risk it.
A couple things on what you just said. First and foremost, this is the way that he's handling the Steelers organization right now is a really bad look because people forget when he was grossly underpaid. When they gave when Mike Wallace held out and they said, fine, we'll give the money to Brown. They made him a very wealthy man. And he's quickly in 2014 and 2015 was well ahead of where he was, what everyone thought, and he was grossly underpaid. And so what the Steelers didn't have to do anything, but instead they kept on moving money up, giving him more money signing bonus wise, because they wanted him to be, because it's what he cared about, one of the top paid receivers. And so they do all that work for him. They give him that new contract. He's at the time the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. And this is what I hate about players that always want to be labeled the highest paid player in the NFL. It's just like what I always say about when they have those stats that, they've never done this. Well, that's until they do. You're going to be the highest paid wide receiver until the next wide receiver gets a new contract. So you're always chasing the carrot at the end of the string, because even if you grab it, there's going to be another person that's out ahead of you once they get a new contract. Look at baseball. Manny Machado just signed one of the biggest free agent contract in team sport history, 10 years, $300 million. I'm not going to get into baseball and all that stuff, but Bryce Harper will probably get a deal that's going to trump that. And so Manny Machado's legacy will be like for a month, if that, weeks maybe. So yeah, I never understood the whole chasing to be the highest paid at their position and all that stuff.
Well, here's the thing when it comes to contracts, before we get into our next topic, is if players want, it's this delicate dance. Teams want your rights for a certain amount of years, and they're willing to pay for it. Players want to get a certain amount of money, so they're willing to give up their rights for a certain amount of years. It's this delicate dance. But if you want to consistently be paid the highest, you should forego some signing bonus for guaranteed money in paragraph 5, your salary, to give yourself an opportunity to get back to free agency. So instead of trying to negotiate these 5-year deals, so on and so forth, players should try to negotiate shorter deals with more salary and less signing bonus. But the way the league is structured and the way things are going, it's hard for players to sign 3-year deals or 2-year deals so they can get another bite at the apple, because they want that upfront money, because the game is so violent. You want 50 M's, 75 M's up front because legitimately you could get hit and you never play again the next practice. So it's a damned if you do. It's definitely a catch-22 for players and how they move forward in negotiating contracts.
Well, and that's the one of the biggest things with the when the labor agreement, the current CBA expires. See, I still have no idea how so the sport of baseball and the sport of basketball, which not that they don't have their own physical nature, but they're not near as physical as football, have guaranteed contracts. And that's why Bobby Bonilla, who hasn't played baseball in well over a decade, I think it's July 1st, he gets
Yeah.
X number of millions from the New York Mets because contracts are guaranteed in that sport. They're not guaranteed in the NFL. And honestly, I don't understand how the players could sign a new collective bargaining agreement without guaranteeing more percentage of their money being guaranteed. I mean, look at Kirk Cousins' deal. And this is what owners will say. Kirk Cousins was given the most guaranteed money, I want to say, in NFL history. And
100%.
boy, did he look great last year. That's some sarcasm there. He looked awful. And so now they're sitting there thinking, we're stuck with this guy. And we gave him all that guaranteed money. They're probably thinking this is why we don't want to do that. But it's going to be a really interesting situation. I don't want to get off on a tangent too much with contracts and all that. We'll have plenty of time to do that this offseason. But I know, Lance, that you feel very passionately about this next topic. We spoke on the phone this past week, and you were feverishly texting me in anger and venting over the next.
Feverishly. I love it.
Yes.
I love it.
And this was Kevin Colbert's comments backing Ben Roethlisberger as the leader of the team and giving him his full support. And then he also used some verbiage that was not the smartest, not the wisest. And when he related to the other 52 players on the team as quote unquote kids. So, Lance, I'm going to give you the floor. And I want you to tell me your thoughts, and you can vent if you want on the air. If you want to hold back, I get it too. But I want to get your feelings for Kevin Colbert's comments on Ben Roethlisberger, him giving the stamp of approval as the leader of the team, can criticize whomever he wants. Basically saying what Antonio Brown said in his tweet about how he has that owner mentality. I'll give you the floor, Lance. Go ahead.
Let me just say this. I think the use of the term, and not trying to complicate it, just the use of the term kid was a very bad choice. And the funny thing about Kevin Colbert is he was given the opportunity to sort of walk that back on the NFL network, and he really didn't. He kind of doubled down on it. Just from my perspective, I don't think you call grown men kids. Grown men are men. They're young men. And when you're paying a guy that much, he's definitely not a kid. And I think Kevin Colbert just has to realize that certain individuals are going to bristle at being called that. Me in particular, I've been called a kid by people older at my job and at my profession. And the first thing I did was correct them with simply saying, look, I'm not a kid. I'm 48 years of age. I have 3 kids of my own, and I'm not a kid. I'm a grown man. And just being called someone's kid, for most men, you're going to feel a certain way about that. Like, I'm not your child, because that's the first thing that you're going to think. Like, I'm a grown man. I'm a young professional. I'm a younger professional. I may not have as much experience as you, but I'm definitely not your kid, and I'm not your child. I mean, that's the first thing first thing that I thought of when I heard that. I was like, whoa, he called them kids? Like, he's definitely not their kids. But let me read a tweet from Shannon Sharp. And this is what I think is going on here. He wrote the following: my take on the Steelers situation. Kevin Colbert is trying to force Ben as a leader on the team, and that will not work. Colbert's declaration was signed off on by Mr. Rooney. AB must have talked to someone about Ben's behavior and got what Colbert said publicly yesterday. Now, let me read another tweet, and let me give a shout out to Lloyd Miller, at Lloyd Miller on Twitter. Hopefully, Lloyd, you're checking out the program. And he wrote the following: I found Colbert's comments much more interesting because he said, if, in quotes, our guys were smart, they would, in quotes, would listen to him. That's admitting Ben isn't leading the team right now. That's the problem, Jeff. And as a leader of young men, being a coach at one point in time, and as the head of your family, you know you can't push leadership onto someone. Leadership is organic, and it is fostered due to your behavior in that locker room, how you treat people and how you carry yourself, and how you work and how you go after your trade. You cannot force leadership. You can't do it. And Colbert is trying to do it for a guy that many people have said is not a true leader. Think about how many teammates have come to Ben Roethlisberger's defense over the course of the last week. How many people have come out and said that Ben is a leader? You had Ryan Clark literally laugh when asked if Ben was a leader. I mean, he chuckled, he laughed. We all know about the back and forth between Ben Roethlisberger and Hines Ward and how they challenged each other. Ben is a quality football player, Hall of Fame football player, arguably the greatest quarterback in Pittsburgh Steelers history. But Ben is not a leader. He is not a true leader. He just isn't. And that's not a knock on him. It just might be that's not his personality style. So why force it and push it on the guy if he's not a true leader? Let someone else lead the team and he have input. But again, to Colbert's calling grown men kids, I just don't think you do that. And I would feel a certain way of being called someone else, another grown man's child. No way. I'm a grown man. I'm not a child. I'm not a kid. And he's definitely not my daddy. So that's kind of my mentality and what I would have thought had I heard that.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of crazy how Ben Roethlisberger has kind of been dragged through the mud throughout this whole mess. No one with the right mind that really pays attention thought that Ben Roethlisberger was a tremendous leader. But just pay attention; it just seems very fake, very fabricated. Like you said, when people talked about their past playing with Roethlisberger, I'll give you the perfect example. Joshua Harris, who used to play for the Steelers, he was a running back on the team. He was a rookie out of Wake Forest. When I think it was 2014, that was the year that Le'Veon Bell was hurt in Week 17 against the Bengals and missed the playoffs. That was when they had to go out and sign Ben Tate prior to the wild card game against the Baltimore Ravens that year. And Josh Harris was another running back, and he spoke about being on the team that year. And he said that when he walked in the first day as a rookie, the first person he saw that said hello to him was Troy Polamalu, who introduced himself, welcome to the team. If you need anything, let me know. We'll help you get acclimated, make you feel right at home. Then he said like James Ferrier, some of the other defensive guys, they all were very welcoming. And then he said that Ben Roethlisberger was the guy that just kind of rolled in and then rolled out. Like there was nothing welcoming about him. He didn't he didn't go out of his area to go and meet anybody. In other words, he said that he didn't talk to Ben until the playoffs. Think about that. Not even one word was spoken between the quarterback. Now, he wasn't an active running back. He was someone that basically was a game day inactive type player, but still a guy that made the roster. And it wasn't until the playoffs when he would be thrust into the lineup that he actually had any communication with the quarterback. That's just Ben Roethlisberger. That's not breaking news if you pay attention. But there's been stories like that been told a lot. And you can check out Josh Harris's podcast on his official Twitter page. And he tells that same exact story that I just did. So I don't want to put words in his mouth. You can listen to him on your own. But nonetheless, Roethlisberger he is who he is. I think that I ask you this, Lance. Okay, so Kevin Colbert, in my opinion, he had to come out and say something like this because Roethlisberger had been dragged through the mud, like I mentioned. If he were to say, you know what, our offense, the leader on that offense is Marquise Pouncey, no doubt about it. And what would that say about the quarterback? Because the quarterback's supposed to be the leader of your football team. I mean, wouldn't that make it worse, don't you think?
That's an interesting take, Jeff. I mean, the leader of your football team is the leader of the football team. That's who it is. I mean, there's this perception, I believe, from fans that the quarterback should be the leader of the football team. And, maybe that's an inaccurate one. The funny thing about the whole thing about Ben Roethlisberger's comments, and we talked about this when he made those comments in Denver. I mean, we laughed on the show. We said, "Oh wow, this is going to be terrible. Like this is not going to go well." Like you could just see this is a hand grenade. I mean, this is not going to go well. And it felt like he said it, and because he said it, now the organization has to back it. He said, "I'm the leader." The organization's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, he is the leader." Like, like they had to back it after he said it. But I think fans would perceive it in a very curious. I think you're right. I think fans would not absorb what Colbert said if he said Marquise Pouncey was the leader of the offense and the leader of the football team. People would go, "Wait a minute, isn't it Ben? Isn't he the high?" But maybe it isn't. I mean, leadership is leadership. Guys draw leadership from who they are going to organically. It's not going to be just because you're the quarterback or you're the highest paid player. And the one thing also that Colbert said that I found very interesting was, how they should glean and get this information from Ben and so on and so forth. And some of that is revisionist history because, when the Steelers were winning Super Bowls, I mean, Ben made plays. Ben was an integral part of that. However, those teams were defensive led. I mean, those were dominant defensive teams that Ben Roethlisberger and an inconsistent offensive line and inconsistent offense were able to ride to championships. They were the backbones of those teams. It wasn't as if it was a Brady-led team where Brady is pulling everybody, by the bootstraps, so to speak, to those championships. It's just, again, to Shannon Sharp's comments, I think they are trying to thrust leadership on Ben, and I don't think he is. Let me read something to you, Jeff, and comment on this. This is from Chris Muller, PGH, at Chris Muller, PGH. He's from 937 The Fan. He wrote the following: "I'd be okay with Colbert's comments about Roethlisberger and leadership if I thought Roethlisberger would use the power the GM is giving him judiciously. I don't. And I don't think Colbert's words would be necessary if Ben's leadership skills were unquestioned in the locker room."
That's interesting. I mean, I definitely understand what he's saying. It all stems from the stupid radio show. Let's be honest. And I said this on another show, might have been the Steelers preview, that some of the best news I could hear this offseason is that 93.7 The Fan and Ben Roethlisberger have decided to not continue the show this year, that they're going to part ways and they're going to have the number one Cochran 93.7 The Fan Jordan Berry show where they're going to talk about Australian rules. I think that would be better for me because it just seemed I got real sick and tired of Roethlisberger using that platform. To me, this whole mess screams of something that I used to call as a coach, it's time for a come to Jesus meeting. And that is when
you're absolutely right.
Yes, and that is when you get everyone in a room, you close the door, you lock the door, and you say, "Look, we're getting it all out. You tell him what you think of him, and you tell him what you think of him, and you don't hold back. You leave nothing out. You leave nothing inside. You put it all out there, and then we're going to talk about it, and we're going to leave here, and we're going to get off, and we're going to be fine." That's what you had to do as a high school coach a lot, because obviously they're immature and sometimes they don't know how to handle criticism and things of that nature. But at the same time, this is what this feels like. I mean, it feels like, assuming Brown and Bell are gone, and we know that at least Bell is going to be gone, that this team is going to have to get together, and Mike Tomlin's going to have to lead this charge, and he's going to have to say, "Look, this offseason has been bad from a perception standpoint, from a roster talent skill standpoint, and we're going to have to get off on the right page starting now, like right now. And so let's air our grievances, just like on Seinfeld. I'm not sure if you're a Seinfeld fan, but you have the holiday, the Festivus holiday where you air your grievances, and that's where George's dad said, "I got a lot of problems with you, Costanza." That's what they need to do. Just get it. If Vince Williams has an issue with how Ben Roethlisberger leads, tell him. Tell him you don't appreciate the way that you handled James Washington as a rookie last year. I just think that that's going to be better off for the team. And that's where ultimately I feel that if you get rid of Brown and Bell, are you losing skill and talent? Absolutely. No one is denying that. But at the same time, if you lose Brown and Bell, could you possibly become a more cohesive team? I think you could. Think about the drama. Think about the drama the past few seasons. It is almost always circumnavigated those two players in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and you look at the arc of the team. I mean, you go from 13-3 to I believe 11-5 to 9-6-1. You can make the argument was the act was the talent worth it? And I don't. There's only you can only go. I mean, they could go down, but you could go up as well. I mean, from a football perspective, and I'm sure the site, our show, all the podcasts, we'll talk about the very interesting question as to what this offense will look like if both of those players are no longer, at Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think that's the most interesting part of all of this is how will it look offensively? How will Ben have to change his game, to accommodate a lot less talent, and that a lot will be, he will definitely have the lion's share of this. This will be on his shoulders and how he plays to get guys to actually be better. And so that's the interesting thing. And that's the exciting thing going into this 2019 campaign is what will this team look like from an offensive perspective? And hopefully Ben takes all of these shots from fans, well, not many from fans, but many in the national media, no shots from the Pittsburgh media. Pittsburgh media absolutely put their arms around Ben Roethlisberger and shielded him from any type of achievement needs. Those guys, I mean, oh, wow. I mean, wow, they put their arm around Ben Roethlisberger. But hopefully Ben takes this as a slight. Hopefully Ben Roethlisberger is pissed. Hopefully this makes Ben so pissed that Ben comes in at a fresh, lean, and trim 235. Best shape of his life. Works the hardest he has in his career because he wants to prove to people that I am Big Ben. I made AB. I made this other guy, Le'Veon Bell. I'm the man who stirs the drink in Pittsburgh. I am the man. And hopefully he comes back and he's motivated and there's a spark lit because people are taking shots at him. And I hope he takes that personally from a football perspective and gets after it next year.
I hope he's not a stress eater. He's probably telling his wife, well, hey, when you come home from the grocery store, can you pick up a dozen donuts? I'm stressed. I gotta.
He looked a little chunky at that Pens game. He looked a little chunky. Hey, if Le'Veon is 260, as they report allegedly, Ben look about 285 at that Pittsburgh Classic at that Pens.
Yeah, not good. Not good.
Chunky. He looked double chitty. He looked double chitty. Oh no. He's not a stress eater. That's the greatest, Jeff. That's the line of the year in 2019. I don't know if we'll be able to top that. He's not a stress eater. That's great.
Hopefully, he's probably. I mean, you know that he's hearing this stuff. I mean, you know that he's reading the papers, and that his agent at least is saying, Ben, it's not good, man. I think he's playing his cards perfectly, and that is. Don't say a thing. Just stay out of the news. And the only way he's going to have to address the media prior to spring practices is if and when he signs his new deal. Most likely they might have a press conference, in which case that'll be very interesting to hear. Is he going to say anything about his side of the story? No,
he's not going to say anything at all. He's not.
I don't think so either.
He's not. He's going to sign the contract. He's not going to mention Antonio Brown or Le'Veon Bell if he thinks that, he knows that Bell's not going to be a Steeler. If he thinks Brown is no longer going to be a Steeler, he's not going to say anything about Antonio Brown, other than the fact that he's an excellent player. I wish him the best. He's not going to say anything else. But in fact, though, the interesting thing, he's already extended an olive branch to AB after the whole Denver thing. He's already extended the olive branch. So he's made his comment that he's going to make about Antonio Brown already. So he's not going to say anything except cut the check, baby. Where do I sign?
Yeah. No, you're right. And that's, hey, like you said in your show, silence is golden sometimes. So the only thing we're going to hear from Kevin Colbert, he'll be speaking at the NFL Scouting Combine. I want to say it is Wednesday, and it's like at 11:15 Eastern Standard Time, I think, is when he's at the podium. He'll get a lot of questions, obviously, about Antonio Brown's potential trade, Ben Roethlisberger's leadership. It'll be a lot of regurgitated information. Don't think there's going to be any breaking news there. And then after that, Mike Tomlin won't speak. He's one of the only coaches that does not speak at the combine. He won't speak until the owners' meetings down in Florida, which is, I believe, after the combine, right before the new league year begins. And they have competition committee meetings down there and all that. So there's going to be some chances to hear some thoughts, emotions. I'm really curious to hear what Mike Tomlin has to say. And I know he's going to give you the stock answers, but he's also,
Obviously.
yeah, obviously. But he's also cunning enough, and uses his words well enough that he'll make a statement or two without really making a brash statement, if you know what
Right.
I mean.
Right.
So
Right.
he'll have those comments about Brown or Bell or whatever. So kind of like we want volunteers, not hostages, like that type of stuff. So, all right, Lance. Well, hey, that's all I wanted to get through today. Is there anything you wanted to say to the fan base before we call it a show?
Yes, don't invest 1 second in the combine. That's the worst TV. That's the worst sporting event on TV. It's terrible. Please do not
Yeah.
spend a second on the combine. Oh, he's fluid in his hips. Come on, man. Come on, man. That's the worst TV ever. Second of it.
Yeah, I'm always been more of a film guy. I'd rather watch you play football because what's the use of watching an offensive lineman run 40 yards in a straight line? Because that's going to happen a lot, you know.
Yes, a
So,
lot.
hey, the diaper Olympics will be on full display. So if you're interested in that, you can check that out. But otherwise, make sure you do check out all of our other shows on the Behind the Steel Curtain podcast platform. Now on YouTube, you can find us by searching BTSC Steelers Radio. You'll get this show, The Standard is a Standard, my show, The Steelers Burning Question, and The Steelers Preview. Those three shows are there weekly. We're going to work on getting Lance's show. Yeah, I said it. His audio put on our YouTube channel. I'm going to work on that this week. But also, if you don't know, on our podcast platform, which is just audio, you can find us on any of the major platforms. That's iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, my favorite, Spotify. Just search Steelers and you'll find us. Look for the Behind the Steel Curtain logo and you'll get all those shows I mentioned. Lance's Yeah, I Said It, and the Steelers Hangover, as well as some other stuff like the I've been posting where I've done some radio spots. Lance had a bonus. Yeah, I said it last week. So check out all that stuff there. Make sure you subscribe, tell a friend. We appreciate all the support. And BehindTheSteelCurtain.com should be your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll see you next Sunday for another episode of The Standard is the Standard.